Hi, I'm Ethan Kwan and welcome to another Scratch tutorial. This time we are going to be coding up a heat simulation. Now, what is this going to be about? Well, it's easier to show you, so let's just play the simulation that I made ahead of time, and it's called Heat Flow. So, wow, that is amazing. A bunch of dots moving around. Whoa! Okay, but it's not just a bunch of dots moving around. As you just saw, all the dots are trying to maintain a level temperature. So this represents the temperature in a bar of whatever, really. But it represents a bar, and each dot represents the heat. So, for example, and each dot tries to match the heat of its neighbors because heat flows through a system, blah, blah, blah. By the way, this doesn't look very much like a bar, so we are going to just crank up this repeat number, and that should look more like a line. It also looks more like a graph. Oh, it's kind of slow. I'm going to change this down. Something slower. Yes. Okay. So, you are going to be learning how to make all this today, except for maybe this type. This type is kind of annoying. Okay, so, first, let's explain how this works. So, how did this work? Let's just shrink this down to let's shrink this down to something small, like 27. There we go. Okay, and crank up the shrink speed. Okay, so, let's explain how this works. So, I'll play it again and I'll go over it. Okay, so, the dots try to match the temperature of its neighbors. How does it do that? Well, it takes the average of the two temperatures, and if it's higher, then it goes up, blah, blah, blah. Let's explain that in a little bit more detail. So, for example, this dot goes up because the dots around it are, that was a bad example. The dots around it are hotter than it. So, yeah, so that's why it goes up. On the other hand, this dot goes down because the two dots next to it are going down, are below it, right? And they all just try to minimize that temperature, blah, blah, blah. So today we are going to be learning how to make this thing. So I have a new Scratch project up and ready, and what we're going to do is pause this simulation because it might lag my computer so bad, and go to here. First of all, let's delete the Scratch Cat, go to backdrops. Yes, I'm going a little bit fast, sorry about that. You can always slow down the video. We're just going to create a backdrop, black backdrop. And okay, so we are going to draw a new sprite. First of all, we're just going to make a dot. Really, you can make it anything, but I'm just going to make it a dot. I'm just going to change the color a little bit so it looks nice. And just plop that straight in the center. That looks a little bit teeny. Let me just change this. By the way, you don't have to follow my tutorial here. I'm just gonna make it huge so it's easier to see. Yeah, that's pretty good. And yes, great. Okay, so first of all, we are going to be creating let's see. We are just going to be creating the clones, right? So, by the way, I did this with actual sprites, so I had to duplicate all the code, and it was a real pain, so don't do that, don't fall for that. I'm going to be using it with clones. Yeah, so, let's create a block. I'm going to call it create clones, and I'm going to click this run without screen refresh, click OK. Inside this define, we are going to, well, first we're going to delete the my variable. We're going to create a new variable, call it ID, and let's make it for the sprite only. Oh, by the way, sorry, you have to click the run without screen refresh, ticked on the create clones block. Anyway, create a variable, ID, for the sprite only. We can name this dot, if you want, dot ID, and we're also going to create a clone number variable for all sprites, and we're also going to be creating a change by variable for all sprites. Okay, so what we're gonna and we also have to make a list called y position. this will store the Y positions of all the clones. So click OK, and there we go. What will all these do? Y position will store all the clones' Y positions and change them and update them. Change by, I spelled that wrong. Change by will determine how fast the dots move. Okay. The clone number will determine how many clones there are, and the ID will determine each dot. So you have a way to distinguish each dot. So we're just gonna set a bunch of these variables. Set clone number to 0. Let's say like 10, just for testing purposes. Because this will determine how many clones are created. Change by, we're gonna set ID to 1 at the beginning, and set change by to 0. Let's set this to, actually we don't have, let's just set that to like 10 for now. And we are going to delete all of Y position, okay? So, let's see, is there anything I forgot? Nope, okay. So, we are also gonna go into motion and set X to, it doesn't really matter where you put this, just make sure to set X to -200. This is just where I chose. You can change this however you want. Okay, now we're gonna say, repeat. We're gonna need a repeat 10 block. Instead of 10, we're gonna say repeat clone number. Repeat clone number. We are going to create a clone of myself. Create a clone of myself. Oh, and before that, we have to set the Y position to something random. Set Y to, go to operators, pick random, -160 to 160. Why did I choose 160? Just preference. You can change that however you want, but just make sure it's below 180. Because that's the limit of the screen. The top and down, yeah. Okay, and now we should see that all the, let's hide all these. All the dots are, oh, right, we have to just click this. There we go. Yeah, nice. Now we have all these. Oh, by the way, let's just go to events, drag a when green flag clicked, and get the create clones block. Oops, I clicked it again. Water. Always need water. When green flag clicked, create clones, and that should work, yes. So now all the dots are randomly on this side of the screen. Now I want them to be spread evenly across here. So how do we make them spread evenly? Well, there are a few ways to do this. One way, my favorite way is make them really well spaced out, and that's going to be to change X by, and we're gonna say, we're gonna drag a divided by, put that in there, drag the clone number, and also we are going to get the, we're gonna just type 400 in here. Because why 400? Because we typed in -200 right here, and so I want it to be symmetrical on both sides, so 400 is 200 times 2, right? Basic math. Okay, and we are going to also add my Y position, right before the create clone, Y position to Y position. And now we should see that they are evenly distributed. You'll see that if we just get rid of this, randomize the thing. Yeah, as you can see, they're evenly spaced out. Let's just put that back in. Yes, okay, great. So, as you can see, there's a problem, and it's not noticeable at first, but every time you click the green flag, there are 2 dots that are always the same, and those 2 dots are here, and the last 2 dots, yes, as you can see. And also, if you count them, actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we have 11 dots. Why is that? Well, this extra one, is actually just the clone. It's not a clone, it's actually the main sprite here. All we have to do is go to looks, get a hide at the bottom, and drag a show at the top. Okay, and now we should, that last dot is gone. Great, okay. And now actually, since we added Y position to Y position, what we did is, as you can see, there. Okay, so let's do a little bit more scripting for the clones. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get a when I start as a clone, and get a forever loop, and we're just gonna update the Y position. So we're just gonna say Oh, and by the way, oh yeah, one more thing I have to do. Change. We're just gonna get this below the create clone of myself. Change ID by 1. And now each one should have a separate ID. So this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Okay, so when I start as a clone, actually we can show it here. Yeah, as you can see, it's 11 because we changed it one more time before we hit it, right? That last one is the main sprite. It increased it by 1 more time because technical reasons and stuff, but ignore that. It's about 10, sure. It's like approximately 10, sure. It's 1 off. Okay. No. What we're gonna do is we're gonna get this replace item 1 of Y position with thing. That's clearly wrong. We don't want to replace item 1 of Y position with thing. We want to replace item ID of Y position with Y position. And this will basically, okay, so how does this work? Inside the Y position list, if we're looking at, let's say, the 4th item, which is right here, it's this one right here, this one. It will, whenever it will get its ID, which is 4. So 4, it will replace it with its current Y position. So actually, if we drag this around, you can see that the 4th item in the list is changing. Yeah. Okay. So that's great. That works. So what we're gonna do now is we are going to say, we need to make it like smooth out, right? We need to make it an actual heat distribution because this is kind of lame. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say, by the way, if you don't know how to calculate averages, it's pretty easy. You just take the first number plus the second number divided by the number of items you have, in this case 2, so we can just put 2 in there. Oh yeah, this is I'm just getting that ready for now. So inside, we're gonna get a new when I start as a clone because this one is already running this loop for this checking Y position thing. So what we're gonna do is when I start as a clone, forever, and we're immediately gonna need an if then. And why is that? Well, that's because, well, look at this first item and this last item. These two actually don't have a left, or they don't have a right. So we're going to have to check and filter those out, and we're going to have to change those afterwards. So what we're going to do after that is we are going to say if, and we're just going to say, we're going to need a not, we're going to need an or, we're going to need a equals, we're going to need both equals like this. And we're going to go to variables, get the ID variable, ID, and set this to first item. So if not ID equals 1 or ID equals length of Y position. Now, how did this work? So let's go from the inside out. Great movie, by the way. Okay, so this first part, ID equals 1. Well, that's basically just the first item in the list, so that's pretty easy. Or ID is equal to length of Y position. Well, let's show the list. What is the length of Y position? Length is 10. So item 10 is actually the last item in the list, which will give you this last one. So we're checking for the first and last one, which is perfect. And this not is here because we're just going to put all the code for running like the heat distribution stuff inside here. Okay? Great. So what we're going to do is we are going to say, we can hide this Y position. We can say that since we have this, it's fine. But anyway, we're gonna say change Y by and this thing, but then we're gonna have to subtract my Y position. Why is that? Because, well, we're gonna have to get the difference between the average and me, and we're just gonna change by that amount. So if it's positive, we're gonna go up. If it's negative, we're gonna go down, right? And that's just the difference between the two. It's just simple math. Just trust me on this if you didn't get this. Okay, so we're gonna go to motion, get this Y position, drag this in the side, and just drag this whole thing in here. Okay, now here's some annoying math. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say inside variables, we're gonna get our item 1 of Y position. Now this will just get the first item in the list, but we're gonna need item ID of Y position. What will this do? Well, let's say we're looking at item 4 again. In item 4, we're just going to get this item. Now, we're going to actually add 1 to ID. So if we add 1 to ID plus 1, that's just going to go to the next item in the list, right? And we can just duplicate that, change the plus to a minus, and it should all be fine, right? Because if we minus it, it'll go to 3, so 4 to 3 is the item before it. So actually, yeah. So we're going to need a minus, get this ID variable, and -1. It's pretty easy. And just drag both of those in here. So we're just taking the average of the two next to it. That's basically it. Okay, so now actually, we should have a pretty interesting looking rubber band. Whoa, it's a rubber band. Woo! But that's obviously not what we're aiming for. Of course, heat doesn't flow like that. And that's because of Scratch and its annoying thing with minuses and like calculation and that kind of thing. What we're gonna do is actually we're gonna say we want some dampening, right? We don't want it to like immediately jump and like blow. It's weird. So we're gonna get, this is how you dampen stuff, by the way. You get it divided by, and you say variables change by. We're gonna need this change by, and we're just gonna drag this, oops. I shouldn't have kept the simulation running, but that was pretty interesting anyway. Let's zoom out. And we're just gonna drag this whole thing and divide it by change by. And we can zoom in again, and we can, whoops, no. We can just drag this whole thing, whoops. We can just drag this whole thing into here. And now, we should actually see that we have a working heat simulation. Okay, as you can see, there are two things we need to fix. First of all, the easier one is that it's kind of slow. Yeah. Okay, one thing we can do to fix that is, well, it's not that slow right now, but if we change this clone number to something like 30, which will clone 30 of them, it will actually get kind of slow. Yeah, it's kind of slow in making the clone, yeah, as you can see, it's kind of frozen right now. So we can just change this change by to something lower, like 2, and that should pretty much fix it. Look. Yeah, see, it's evening out much faster. Nice. Okay. The other problem, let's change this back to 10, and change this back to 10. One other problem is that the ends aren't moving. Wow! Why is that? Well, it's actually pretty obvious. It's not a bug. We just left this else bit untouched because those will get you the two outer ones. We're gonna need another else, if then else. Okay, so what we can do is we can actually just duplicate this in here, duplicate that, and this will just say, okay, so if ID is equal to 1, that'll be this first item. And we kind of just want it to like match this one because we don't have a left, really. We don't have a left one, so we're not going to take the average. We're just going to try to make it match this one on the right. So all we have to do is we're just going to have to do item ID plus 1. Actually, you don't even have to do that. You can just say item 2 of Y position because we know it's the next item because we're ID 1. But just to be safe, you could just put this back in ID plus 1. Okay, so we're just gonna say change Y by, oh, actually instead of doing that, we can just duplicate this whole thing. Get rid of this divided by 2. Get rid of the whole thing, and put this item ID plus 1 of Y position. That should actually immediately fix it. As you can see, it's actually already going up, but yes, so there we go. As you can see, this endpoint is moving, but this endpoint is not, so we have to fix that too. Okay, so how would we do that? Well, we can actually just duplicate this, change this. Instead of plus 1, we can just get this -1 over here, and put that in there, and that should literally be fine. Now, as you can see, now we have a working heat simulation. Yay! We have accomplished our goal. And it actually even works for larger values of clone number. So we can just change this like 50. One limit is one problem is that Scratch has a 300 clone limit, so actually 300 is the highest you can go without lagging Scratch or just breaking Scratch. So we can just play this, and now we have 50 clones averaging out, and actually it looks much more like a line being smoothed out. As you can see, all the wrinkles like this goes away. Yeah. So I really want to add color because it's kind of bland right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to get another, I can zoom in. We're going to get another when I start as a clone block. When I start as a clone, and this is pretty easy, we're just going to say forever. We're just going to say set color effect to, and we can just actually, it's the easiest thing ever. We can just drag the Y position in here, and it should fix. It should be fine. Yeah. Okay, that doesn't look that great. So, let's change a few things. I think the colors are a little bit too, like, if you go up a little bit, it changes too much. So what we can do is actually just go to operators, get it divide by 2, and that should fix it. Yep. There we go. And now we should see that we have less of a color change. Yay! Okay. So, you can just play around with this, but anyway. Okay, so thank you for watching this. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe, like, and share this channel with others. Oh, by the way, I forgot to totally mention this. YouTube! Woo! There we go. Now we have the YouTube thing. Yay. Okay, so I can name this heat sim. And I'm going to just share it. I'm going to add it to YouTube Tutorials Studio. Click OK. And there we go. Now we have a complete heat simulation thing. By the way, things you can add to this, you can add, what you can add is, let's see. So in here, in the dot sprite, what you can do is, first of all, you can change the colors, right? You can change the colors to be different, like you can change this to 3, you can add and subtract values to this, whatever you want, it's up to you. Also, one more thing, you should probably shrink this down, like this much, because then it looks better for some reason. But that's your choice too. It looks okay. Only reason you might want to do that is if you set clone number to 200 or something really big, something crazy. By the way, 200 dots simulating, it's not even slow, it's not even lagging. Wow. Scratch is great, but as you can see, it's kind of slow. We can just set this to 2. There we go. Okay, so I hope you like this video. I hope you learned something. You can totally remix this and add your own ideas. You can change the colors, you can change the shapes, whatever you want. It's up to you. You can even add like a bar at the bottom showing like the bar of metal where we're conducting the heat, and you can change the colors of the bar, whatever you want. It's up to you. Okay, so thank you for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe, like, and share this channel with others. And if you didn't like it, whatever, you can just smash that dislike button, I guess. And don't forget to tweak around with the settings in this. You can also remix this project. It's on my FunnyPine1234-test profile where I keep all my YouTube videos, YouTube Scratch tutorials, and again, see howtodosomething.com. And see you next time. Bye. By the way, this is my second attempt. The first attempt, the audio didn't work. So I hope this time it works. I think it did, but whatever. See ya. Bye.